Can we talk about winners and losers already in free agency? Yep, we sure can, and that's exactly what we're going to do today here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Man, I love when I hear that, your team every day. That's because that's exactly what it is here on Locked On NFL. We're going to bring it to you just like we always do. Chris Carter's the guest today, again, on Thursday here on Locked On NFL, where you can get your podcast wherever you get them. Make sure you tap in, whether you watch them or listen to them. Locked On NFL will be there each and every day, and we'll be there twice a day. Shout out to the everydayers for joining us. Here's what we're going to discuss. Rodgers to where? Me and Chris going to have a conversation about something we talked about a few weeks back. And, man, this thing is really played out really, really weird. The Browns, I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round because of the way they're moving. They traded for Kenny Pickett, and they got a visitor in town. We'll discuss that. And we'll start at the top with winners of free agency. Chris, it's always dangerous to say who wins the offseason because every single time a team wins the offseason, they don't win nothing when the regular season starts.
No, it's absolutely the case. How many times have you seen people load up in free agents and then those free agents don't work out? Oftentimes, if you have free agent money, it's because you don't have a nucleus yet. You're not paying guys to stick around because you haven't drafted well and you haven't built things well. So, oftentimes when you sign big guys in free agency, you better land some serious pieces that expand things. But it doesn't always lead to that. But hey, sometimes winning free agency. The real winners of free agency, the ones that make smarter moves, not bigger moves.
There you go. About quality, not quantity, or sometimes it's just the ones that balance it out the best instead of overspending. Look, say what you want to say about the Chicago Bears. They even got the ops talking good about them. Here's from the NFL Squad Show. Listen, knock on wood. Now, Peter Bukowski says he didn't want anybody to hear this, but he said it loud enough, so we're going to put it in the air. Check this out.
Peter, let's start things off with you here today. Across the entire NFL, which team stood out to you as moving the needle a little bit with some of their impact signings?
I think in terms of moving the needle, the team that I felt like very quickly and expediently handled every question that I had. And if you ever tell anyone I said this, I will deny that I said it. The Chicago Bears. I know that it was expensive what they did, but the interior of that offensive line was a nightmare. And Caleb Williams, for better or for worse, wants to hold the ball. And so if you just have to live with that. If you're the quarterback, like Kevin Ostreicher, Lamar Jackson wants to hold the ball too, and because he wants to make every play. So you have to make sure you can block that stuff up. It's not necessarily a problem. And to go out and get Joe Thuney for nothing and to make the all-in moves, really. I mean, that's what they're doing. It was expensive, the amount of money that they're paying a center and two guards, but to solidify that area to go from bad to competent, probably even good, that's a huge jump to make.
Now, offensive lines are always subject to the C's, cohesion, consistency. When you go out and you add 3 interior offensive linemen and you spend that money, sometimes these scenarios end up with a disaster. In this case, I think it was necessary. One of those guys he knows in Jonah Jackson. The other 2 are veterans, and they're all side by side. I do think Joe Thuney being 32 years old and been around the league, the chemistry won't be a problem. I'm going to actually give the Bears an attaboy for what they've done in free agency so far.
I think they deserve, credit for being aggressive. And look, they got a new coach. They're trying to establish a new tone. Having guys that can sort of set a better tone than what's been there and grabbing them from other parts of the NFL. It makes sense. But again, you got to see it coalesce. You got to see it actually develop into something. Because if you just sign big names and then they don't do anything, then you're just gonna be like, well, you spent all that money for nothing. And I'm pretty sure there's several other off seasons very recently where the Bears probably spent the most in free agency and it didn't yield the results that you wanted. So I thought that was, I think that's something that has to wait to be seen. but one group I'm interested in too is the Commanders, because they were able to be some big spenders, and it's different when you're spending and you're in a really bad spot. But they're coming from just losing the NFC Championship game. The Commanders, maybe they could say they're winners, because now they've reloaded with some serious pieces, and they can say, hey, with Jaden Daniels, we're ready to go right now.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you said that, because Spencer Jeremy was on the Squad Show and he said something very, very similar. Check this out.
Like, there's always that one team that spends the most money in free agency, and then they just finish like with an average record. Like they get like 6 or 7 wins. It feels like the Bears are kind of in the running for that, while also being in the running for being the
100%.
team that like overhauled their team the most this offseason. So I come away impressed by the Bears. I also think like the Commanders have kind of been sneaky, making smart moves for their team. They obviously made the trade for Laramie Tunsil, which sort of, turned some heads. Deebo Samuel, the same thing, getting some extra help both up front and on the outside for Jaden Daniels. And then, they signed Javon Kinlaw as a defensive tackle. We know their defense needs some overhauling, but it seems like that's something that they're going to continue to do in the draft this year, and sort of find some more needs that they have to address there. But I do think like those two teams, I think, have stood out as like doing the most impressive things. And yeah, I obviously look forward to seeing what other moves are made here. The big names are obviously kind of off the board, but there's still some dominoes that have to fall, especially at the quarterback position for some teams.
Okay, with Washington, the two biggest moves were actually trades: Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil. Chris, is there with their success that they had last year? Do you have to have a little bit of caution, though, that you don't reach too fast? You got to take that next step, man. Sometimes you see the end and you try to take that big giant leap, and you're usually making a fall.
No, yeah, you got to take everything carefully. And I think some of the things too is you got to make sure you're investing in the right areas, and not making a bad signing where you're locking in with a guy for multiple years that turns out to be a detriment, or just to kind of be a guy that doesn't help you as much, and now you're investing all this money, and that's money you could have invested in other places. So you still got to, every step's got to be careful and calculated, and it has to work. But but I think, again, like the Commanders, with the success they had last year, I think it buys them some capital to be aggressive with. They're able to go get that offensive lineman that'll better help their situation. So again, I think that's what kind of made them interesting to me, is they were still aggressive even after their recent success.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I think they were aggressive. I think they were smart. All of this will be about whether, if Deebo Samuel maybe loses 10 pounds and comes into shape knowing he's going to get to face Philly twice a year, and he has to be on his best behavior. I think that's one thing. The other thing that makes them really, really dangerous, though, with Samuel, with Jaden Daniels, and of course with Scary Terry, they are a run after catch team. They're going to do a lot of things with their legs. It's not with the ball just in the air. You got to make sure you tackle them. If you don't tackle them next year, you are going to be in serious, serious trouble. Speaking of tackling, I'm going to tackle the AFC North. Since I have you here, I got to ask you some questions about the AFC North, but we're going to get to the team that has the second pick in the draft. And folks think that maybe they'll get a quarterback, and we're trying to figure out these mocks. Well, Cleveland is sending you every signal that they are not going to take a quarterback at number 2. I'll tell you and explain what that means in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Surprising insights, all-in-one convenience, easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half your first year. let's get to this AFC North and continue to talk about them. The Cleveland Browns did not trade Myles Garrett and get a bounty of draft picks. The Cleveland Browns they've retained him. They're still going to be on the same track. I think they're going to try to get it back on track. I believe they think their defense is good enough. They got a decent offensive line. They're going to give it a shot, and they're going to give it a shot with a veteran quarterback. It's probably not going to be Deshaun Watson because he's banged up, and even if he wasn't banged up, he wasn't playing well. They did trade for Kenny Pickett, and now they have another visitor. Listen to Spencer German talk about that, and we'll discuss it in a second.
Russell Wilson's meeting with the Browns on Thursday. I think this is a legitimate pursuit by the Browns, but it also, maybe I'm wrong, but it does kind of feel like a little bit of the Browns trying to call the Falcons' bluff even further, like dig their feet in on it. Because I'm sure they've had conversations, and the link has been there for the Browns to pursue Kirk Cousins for months now. And so it does kind of feel like maybe their way of being like, listen, if you want to trade him, you're going to have to look somewhere else because we're going to start looking at other quarterbacks and sort of try to wait them out. The Browns are trying to add another veteran quarterback. I can tell you that much. They don't expect Kenny Pickett to be the starter, as we talked about on Locked On Browns. So their pursuits of any of these guys certainly feel like legitimate. And I don't think they want to end free agency without finding another arm to add to the room. If they miss on Russ, because Russ will have other suitors. He could go to the Giants, maybe back to Pittsburgh. There's been some other teams that he's potentially been in talks with. I think Joe Flacco sort of slides into it being a possibility. I don't think they're going to be in on Aaron Rodgers. But again, still a lot to be determined. We'll see if the Falcons and Terry Fontenot are truly dug in on releasing Kirk Cousins. But I still think that's the number one option for the Browns if they're willing to move on from him. We'll talk about all that and more coming up on tomorrow's Locked On Browns podcast.
Chris, I don't know if you ever been lost and your navigation system wasn't working, but there's this look you have. You just stand there and look around with your hand. You're trying to figure out which way it is you need to go. I think the Browns are as lost as they can be, man, trying to figure out which way they need to go because of Deshaun Watson and his contract.
So they still need to figure some things out. I mean, the Browns, they've been a complete mess. It's so funny because when Myles Garrett, demanded a trade, and you saw Browns fans say trade him to the worst team in the NFL, and then the Browns sign him to an extension, and it's like, did they trade him to the worst team in the NFL because that's them? I think that's kind of what happened there. But I think that one thing, Russell Wilson is, I think he's exploring his options, but I get the impression that Russell Wilson, this is more about the Steelers situation. Russell Wilson just doesn't want to be left out in the cold in a place where he doesn't have a place to start because, all indication, and we're going to get to Aaron Rodgers in a bit, is that he's waiting for the Steelers to call him back. I think the Steelers are waiting on Aaron Rodgers, and I think Russell Wilson's just like, I'm not waiting around to lose the game of musical chairs. I'm finding a place, and so he's visiting the Browns and the Giants, and he's going to see like what are their offers if it's something that he can just jump on right now. I think that he's it's real that he's talking to the Browns, but I think it's going to be a situation where it's like, I think he's doing this to put pressure on the Steelers. Like, hey, Aaron Rodgers is somewhere on a beach, just not paying you any mind. Here I am busting my butt, getting ready for stuff. So I'm going to give you an ultimatum at some point. So I think that's what's going on there. But I don't know if the Browns would avoid Cam Ward in the draft in that situation. Because like Deshaun Watson, it's in your future. And Kenny Pickett, when they traded for him, you're not trading for him because you think he's the guy. I think that if you're sitting there and you think he's the quarterback, you by all means you go get that guy. And you say, I don't care what I signed Russell Wilson for free agency. I don't care if I traded for Kenny Pickett. That's not going to stop me from getting the guy that I think can be a franchise quarterback. Now, if they don't think that Cam Ward is a franchise quarterback, then they will be like, okay, yeah, these guys, we're gonna sign these guys. We'll just wait for next year to see if that's going to be a thing. But yeah, I'm not reading too much into that just yet as far as what the Browns' plan is moving forward.
All right, let's stay right there in Ohio. The Bengals. I tell you, man, they may have, with the way Myles Garrett's negotiations went, one, and then two, the fact that Trey Hendrickson is still out there, and all of these teams that need edge rushers are kind of filling in their rosters in free agency, and there hasn't been a big bite. They might end up doubling back and keeping Trey Hendrickson and letting them know, man, you're going to have to take a little bit less money than you thought because nobody came for you. But in any event, they did make some signings over in Cincinnati, and here's James Rapine to tell you about it.
The Bengals add help on defense. Hi again, everyone. I'm James Rapine from the Locked On Bengals podcast. And whether it was TJ Slayton or Oren Burks, the Bengals knew they needed some new faces on defense. Let's start with Slayton, a big 330-pound nose tackle out of Green Bay. He spent the past 4 years in Green Bay, was a fifth-round pick in 2021 under Jerry Montgomery, who was in Green Bay at the time, is now with the Bengals as their defensive line coach. This makes a ton of sense. He's going to bolster the Bengals' run defense and be a true nose tackle, which they need in the middle of their defense. And Oren Burks, to me, is the perfect Akeem Davis-Gaither replacement. Now, we don't know if Akeem is going to come back or not, but Burks signing a 2-year, $5 million deal makes a ton of sense on special teams for Darren Simmons, a ton of sense as your third linebacker. By the way, Slayton agreeing to a 2-year, $15 million deal. The Bengals defense and the Bengals roster is better now than it was just a few hours ago with these additions. For more, make sure
they are a little bit better. They did get B.J. Hill back in the fold. T.J. Slayton is a big 335-pound defensive back. I do think they worked something out with Joseph Asai as well. They needed to do this, man, because people were wondering what the hell was going on. They lost Lou Anarumo, and now Coach Golden came back from Notre Dame. It's going to be a different defense, but at least they're allowed to. They filled some squares in, and until they figure out what they're going to do with Hendrickson, they now can move forward with a clear path in the draft to take the best available player.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bengals still are not. They still haven't addressed the things that I think that made them not a good team in 2024. This offensive line, can it coalesce? Can it come together? Can this defense, can it find the answers? And I know that they're signing guys to try to fill some of those holes, but this is just the ultimate thing when you're paying 2 superstar wide receivers and a superstar quarterback along with the other pieces that you got that you're paying for already. You're gonna have some holes unless you hit really hard in the draft class on those positions. So I look at their opportunities and I think like, okay, well, the Bengals, they still have cap space, but they need to decide what they're doing with it. And Trey Hendrickson, will he be able to score big? I'm not sure. Maybe teams are waiting them out and trying to see what they can get there. But I still, when I look at this team, I'm still wondering, like, okay, who's going to protect Joe Burrow? Is he going to have time to get the ball off? Is this defense going to be any better than it actually was last year? And if it is better, is it going to be better by enough to make this team, a serious contender? Those are all big questions that I think the Bengals have not answered yet.
And it's tough. And this is the tough part about it. I'm all about players getting their money. I'm all about Burrow stepping up for both Chase and Higgins, and Chase stepping up for Higgins, and Higgins stepping up for Chase. That's a little bit of a group plan where they come together and say, hey, man, we're going to pester them into making sure we stay together. But they have individual representation. So they're doing that together. But they're not getting together trying to figure out a way to make it work. Like, can you take a little bit less and you take a little bit less and you take a little bit less? So that's a hard situation for those Bengals to be in. And I don't envy it, but this is why you get things done early. You should have done T last year. If you'd have done them right last year, you wouldn't have to worry about this right now. And you would have done it for a little bit of a discount. All right. So we got to get to the elephant in the room. We're going to talk Ravens too, briefly, but then we're going to get to Aaron Rodgers and the possibility that he goes up to the Steel City to play with those Steelers. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the net. You know those buzzer beaters are coming. You know those Cinderella stories are coming. It's going to be that one team that everybody's going to be rooting for. All right, this is what you do. Make sure you pick your favorites now. Pick who you think's going to win the game. And then you can let the magic work when it comes to by how many and whatever. Staying in on the action. Live betting is there for you to use just in case you miss a few minutes of the game. You can always be on an action all the way until the end of the game. And it's easy and it's fast and you get paid instantly. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action of March Madness. All tournament long, make sure you choose FanDuel. All right, let's get to these talking points I want to talk about. Aaron Rodgers. You said something a minute ago, and I hated hearing it, that somebody else is waiting on him again. And Russell Wilson is saying, to hell with this. I don't care if it looks different or not. It's more of the same, in my opinion, Chris. But I want to pause right there and let that marinate for a second. Baltimore, the last team that we have not talked about in the AFC North, went out and got a guy. If I never try to attach seasons, I say you have to have garbage in and garbage out. You have to start over. But it appears Baltimore's thinking is this: we need somebody who will catch the ball in the fourth quarter. Sure-handed, catch the ball. They had drops that cost them a chance to go to Arrowhead, and I think they would have beat the Chiefs. Baltimore went out and got a guy, even though he may have lost a step, he can surely catch the ball. Check this out from Kevin Ostreicher.
The Baltimore Ravens make a move at wide receiver. I'm Kevin Ostreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. DeAndre Hopkins is finally coming to Baltimore, and I say finally because it feels like the Ravens have been in on DeAndre for the last handful of seasons. It finally happens in 2025. Hopkins will be 33 by the time the season starts, so it's not like the Ravens are getting prime DeAndre Hopkins or anything here, but it's a one-year deal, $5 million worth up to $6 million, and I think for the Ravens, this is a pretty good move, all things considered. Again, you're not asking DeAndre Hopkins to come in here and be prime D-Hop. You're not asking him to have 100 catches, 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. He'll be behind Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman as a wide receiver 3. You could do a lot worse than DeAndre Hopkins. So I know that he might not be the best wide receiver in Ravens franchise history by the time it's all said and done, but I think is a very solid veteran signing.
All right, so here's why I think this signing is okay. Because Lamar Jackson can buy time, and he'll use his legs. And scramble routes, the guys that do best on that are veteran guys that understand where to go and where to sit down. If this were a situation where it's going to be 1, 2, 3, throw, 1, 2, 3, throw, I don't think Hopkins can separate. But in a situation like this, where you may make him wide receiver 3 or either stick him in the slot, and you know Lamar Jackson can extend plays, I think it's perfect.
I also think that, the signing is a part of the reality of the situation the Ravens are in, right? DeAndre Hopkins is a veteran. They don't have to pay a whole lot of money to join the roster because they don't have a whole lot of money in the salary cap right now. They're paying Lamar Jackson's a $43.6 million cap hit. Marlon Humphrey, 25.3. Roquan Smith, 23.7. Mark Andrews, 16.9. Nnamdi Madubuike, 16.4. Odafe Owe, 13.2. Derrick Henry, 12.8. That is 7 players I just named that are in the double digits in the millions that they're paying. That's not a bad thing. That means they have their core already assembled. And so when you have your core assembled and you still are paying other veterans to stick around and paying certain guys, and there's rookies that you're going to have to start paying again real soon. You can't afford to break the bank or make some aggressive moves. So you got to make some smart, move that fit what you're trying to do without breaking the bank. And DeAndre Hopkins gives you experience, gives you hands, and doesn't force you to break the piggy bank and mess up your salary cap by anything there. So when we talked about certain teams that can't be aggressive in free agency, the Ravens are that right now because they have their nucleus. They just need this nucleus to get over the top. And if they think that DeAndre Hopkins and another sure-handed wide receiver can be the key there, then more power to them.
More power to him. We have discussed everyone, and now we'll get to your Pittsburgh Steelers and the situation that they are in. Chris, I was with you. I was sarcastic, and we were cracking jokes. Aaron Rodgers didn't have a chance in hell of going to Pittsburgh. It looks like Aaron Rodgers has a chance in hell to go to Pittsburgh. Give me the latest from up there. You got boots on the ground. You're 10 toes in. You are the local expert. Tell us how this is going to play out. Tell us if you like it, and you can cook as long as you want to.
My colleague Jerry Dulac, one of our lead beat reporters at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette here, he's reported that the Steelers' offer is in for Aaron Rodgers, and he hasn't made a decision. And he indicates that the weight in the decision is not a financial reason. It's just Aaron Rodgers taking his time to figure out what he wants to do. And yeah, you're rolling your eyes, Tony. I'm right with you.
Yeah,
Like,
I know it, bro.
If I'm the Steelers, like, why am I putting up with that? Like, and not that athletes don't deserve the time to make decisions, because certainly there's, but like, you know what? Last year, when this guy missed a whole season before with the Jets and they knew that it was go time, he doesn't show up to OTAs and minicamp, and then he's saying, oh, he's in his dark retreat in ayahuasca, whatever the heck he's doing, and all this other stuff. And it's just like, it's all this drama and stuff. And it's like, dude, like, you're not that the Aaron Rodgers anymore. You're over the hill Rodgers, and this team has so much to growing to do. And so if you're the Steelers and here you are, you're dealing with this is just a sign. This is what you're going to be dealing with for the next year or 2 years. However long you have Aaron Rodgers, you're going to be putting up with this stuff. And do you want to go through this right now when you're trying to finally build a leadership nucleus on offense that you think that you're getting close to? And I just, Tony, I don't understand it, because you're waiting for all this to happen. And, meanwhile, Russell Wilson's sitting right there. And I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is at this stage of his career is all that much better than where Russell Wilson is at his stage of his career. In fact, when they faced each other, Russell Wilson destroyed him last year. His team, Russell Wilson was in the playoffs last year. Aaron Rodgers was 5-12. So I look at how this has played out. I looked at how things have gone, and I think that this is part of the Steelers. They're trying to figure out, their bridge situation, because this isn't the year they want to be aggressive at quarterback in the draft. I think that's next year. The way that you see it, they've signed players. It's opened them up to get a lot of compensatory picks next year, because most of their additions are either trades or cut players and not players that just openly entered free agency. Whereas the Steelers have lost several players to free agency this year. They're lining up to get several comp picks next season. And I think that that'll be part of their plan to get more ammunition so that they can move up in the draft and go get their quarterback next year. But if you're trying to just get a bridge quarterback this year, A, you don't need all this drama. And B, like, I think the one thing that Mike Tomlin has been able to say over his entire career is that he's never lost the locker room, and he's always had that stability. And that stability has been challenged by knuckleheads, by goofballs, by guys that just went crazy. Antonio Brown, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, guys who, while they were with the Steelers, they were productive. As soon as they left, chaos, ensued. And so the Steelers had that going for him, and Mike Tomlin's been known as that guru that is going to manage the situation, even if he can't make those guys complete, turn into model citizens. He can get the most out of them before they ship them off, and then everyone else figures out, oh man, these guys are much bigger problem childs than we realized. But Aaron Rodgers is a completely different challenge in that regard. That man blew up the Jets' entire organization. If he comes to Pittsburgh, will he have deference and respect for the other leaders in Pittsburgh? Because that's one thing that Russell Wilson had. As soon as he walked in the door, he was like, hey, TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, those are the leaders of the team. Will Aaron Rodgers have that? Will he, when he throws his second interception in the game and he doesn't accept responsibility for it, will he, say it's something about the routes being run? Is it something about the coaching? Is he something this? And then all of a sudden cause this turmoil? All these things you are inviting into your team that you openly saw what he did last season. And to me, that is a mistake. Unless this is a major gamble. Unless Mike Tomlin's like, I'm that guy, I can do it. And listen, I've been a person, I have said for years, I think Mike Tomlin is underappreciated in Pittsburgh because there's a lot of people that don't like him because he hasn't won a Super Bowl since 2009. But I'm also one of the people and I've said that, but I'm sitting here right now. If Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan, the Steelers GM, are okay with bringing Aaron Rodgers into the organization, they have to have the guardrails in place to make sure that none of that happens. Because if he does cause chaos, and the Steelers right now, again, they're not trying to be Super Bowl contenders right now. They're trying to build a roster so that in 2026, when the draft is in Pittsburgh, they can trade up, get their quarterback, and then that's their Jaden Daniels situation. Or for a Pittsburgh relation, that's their Ben Roethlisberger situation. Because when they drafted Ben Roethlisberger, they had an O-line, run game, playmakers, great defense. And so Ben Roethlisberger could come in and just be a rookie quarterback. They want to have that situation going for them next year. But if Aaron Rodgers comes in and leads to an implosion of that and ruins that opportunity, it will be all on the people who brought him in and agreed to get on with that project in the first place.
Bro, I look at the personalities. Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Debo, not in a bad way, kind of in a good way, but it's still stuff that you have to deal with. I'm talking about James Harrison because he could scare the hell out of everybody else. I'm looking at all the guys over the years, and I mean, AB is at the top of the list, right? That they have been able to manage and they have been able to handle. And if Aaron Rodgers, and I forgot to tell you, I can't laugh when you said ayahuasca or whatever, and I almost bust my stitches sitting up here. But if Aaron Rodgers is able to go in and break Alcatraz, and I'm not saying Alcatraz in a bad way, I'm just saying the way Pittsburgh does business is the way that they do business. If he breaks them, he will probably go down, in my opinion, as the worst teammate ever in the NFL, because nobody's been able to do that up there. Even AB and Le'Veon, they had to get out of there before you realize how loony they were. If Aaron Rodgers goes up there and causes, I mean, man, the popcorn is ready. The ultimate team organization against the ultimate diva, selfish guy. Chris, I ain't gonna lie to you, man. I want to see it, and you're gonna be busy if it works out the way that I think it might work out. All right, thank you, man, and once again for joining us here on Locked On NFL on a Thursday. My man CC is gonna go get busy with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and I'll be here tomorrow with my man Matt Williamson, just like we are every single Friday. Make sure you tap in. Also, tap in on Locked On NFL Draft. Damian Parson and Coach Keith Sanchez, they do an excellent job. And if you're out there doing mocks because you have now seen what free agency has given your team, you need to check in with those guys on Locked On NFL Draft, wherever you get your podcast. You guys take care. We'll see you next time here on Locked On NFL.